Welcome to this week's edition of Inside Health. I am Ben Abbott, your host in the studio of Kankadi Radio. That's kankadiradio.info, with our chief engineer, producer Monty Cupid, in the studio of the Hill News Network. That's thehillnews.net, on St. Vincent and the Grenadines, on the height to be exact. Trust all is well with you and your loved ones. And again, thank you so much for your company and allowing us into your space this evening or tonight or this morning, whatever the time in your place. Inside Health is a radio magazine program that takes a look at the human body, the different parts, their functions, conditions, and diseases that affect their performance and possible options for solutions. Today, in this week's edition, we talk men's health. We talk also, hopefully, how to choose a doctor and primary care doctors and specialists. And it's Easter. It's Easter 2023. So let's get started. Well, I did this piece on the program on Nice Radio, on the program Healthy Vibes last Saturday. And I did say then that on Sunday, March the 26th, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Diaspora Committee of New York Incorporated hosted a virtual workshop on the topic, Looking Within the Man in the Mirror. Let's discuss men's health. And the workshop was focused on the conditions, diabetes, hypertension, and associated risk. I thought it might be useful to share what I shared with our listeners on Saturday morning, and we hope at some point sooner rather than later to share the presentations that came out of the workshop on this program here on Healthy Vibes, that is Inside Health on the Hill News Network and Kankadi Radio. I'm always getting mixed up these days. I don't know why. Inside Health, Healthy Vibes. Oh, my apologies. So let us get into what we said on Saturday. This workshop featured presentations by Dr. Camille Fitzpatrick, Dr. Desmond Brown, and nutritionist Sharon P. Mulzak, all Vincentians health workers based there in the US of A. We on Kankadi Radio carried the stream. And friends, it was very, very instructive, very enlightening, encouraging, and very, very respectful an event it was. Well, we on Inside Health would really like to congratulate, and not only on Kankadi Radio and Bay Hill, but all the other affiliates. We'd like to congratulate the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Diaspora Committee of New York Incorporated for hosting this timely event. The health and well-being of us men is at stake. Yes? The living circumstances for families are at stake. Dependent families at home and in the diaspora are in some way or the other affected by the health status of our men wherever we are located. Against this background, we want to say a special thank you to Cheryl and Mason for forging bonds and making the connections, and to the facilitator of that event, Nurse Stanis. We are proud of you. Continue your outstanding work with your patients and colleagues, especially in relation to labor rights and relationships there in the US of A, particularly in the Brooklyn area. We on Kankadi Radio, and of course with the Hill News Network, with the permission of the committee, we'll have a rebroadcast of this virtual workshop on a date to be announced. Friends, I'm happy to report that we have gotten permission to share this workshop. It's about 2 hours long. Again, we would probably do that in segments on this program, working it out with our chief engineer, Monty Cupid, on St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, friends listening on Homeland, and when we say Homeland, you know we often mean not only St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but we also refer to the Caribbean as Homeland, because we know we have many listeners across the Caribbean. to Bay Hill News Network and Kincardie Radio and the other affiliate, Fun City Radio, Success Radio. I guess, friends, you asking the question, what does this event have to do with us on Homeland? But the answer is very simple. Well, that is from our standpoint. Whether on Homeland or far afield, like in the diaspora, diabetes, hypertension, and associated risk factors are wreaking havoc amongst us. This should concern all of us, particularly us Black people. We are at great risk for these diseases. Yes, there are some differences in management and treatment, Homeland versus, say, North America or Europe, but primarily because of some social determinants of health. Like many, yes, education, yes, like not only that, like money, education, health services, and so on. I'm talking here about some of the social determinants that might be different across the waters. But we are all at risk. The cultural differences are not many either. When you speak with Black men and Black families, we often hear about all these taboos, especially amongst our Black folks. We men have all these taboos, and they're very similar across the globe. Like, men should not cry, men should be strong, and if you accept that you have a problem, you're weak, and we can go on and on. Or I do not want to go and have an examination done for my prostate because I don't want anybody to mess with my anus and things like that. And the taboos go on and on and on. Are you still with me, friends? What I found very encouraging and very impressive about the presentations was that similar themes and suggestions and possible strategies were highlighted by all three presenters. And several men asked questions of them. Yes, the men turned up for that workshop for themselves and for their families. Kudos to our men folk who turned up for that workshop on the 26th. So what were some of the points? What were some of the themes that came across in that workshop? So for example, diabetes, hypertension or not, as a family, we are encouraged to eat from the same pot prepared for a loved one living with diabetes or high blood pressure. Put another way, the way persons with diabetes or high blood pressure eat is the same way we are encouraged, those of us who are not living with diabetes or high blood pressure, to eat. We should be eating from the same pot. We should be using less sugar, less salt. We should aim at eating adequate amounts of proteins as far as possible, veggies, good fat, and so on. Of course, I'm not living in a castle in the sky. I'm not naive. I'm not like an ostrich with my head buried in the sand. I understand there are differences, like I said, all around social determinants, money, and all those things. But the point was well made that as a family, we should all be eating the same way one living with diabetes or hypertension should be eating. So instead of eating all this rice and macaroni pie with yam and dasheen with one or two leaf or two pieces of lettuce and things like that on a Sunday, well, when you think about that, that is traditional in most Caribbean places. Lots of carbohydrates. We pack up a lot of stuff there, and with very little protein, with very little vegetables, and so on. How can we turn that around? So if we're using, say, local foods like banana or whatever, we should stick with that as the carbohydrates, or the yam, or the dasheen. Why should we have yam, dasheen, rice, macaroni pie on the same plate for the same meal? Just an example, yes? Another point that came across was that it is important to get checked out regularly by your family doctor or your general practitioner or your district doctor. And this means getting the right blood work and physical examination done. whenever you have, for example, an annual examination. This is something that we on this program, Inside Health, we have been encouraging and highlighting for the longest while. We need to pay more attention to our physical health, our health status, our well-being. And and please don't get me wrong with the point I'm going to make here. We pay a lot of attention to physical stuff around us, our house, our vehicles, and so on and so on. And we make sure they're in tip top shape. Unfortunately, many of us do not pay that kind of attention to our body. And that is unfortunate. So the point was made that we need to pay closer attention to our bodies. And one way of doing that is not the only way, is to see a doctor regularly and get checked out, get all the relevant blood works done, and ask questions before you go to see a doctor. Do some research. What are some of the important blood works for me to get done? Whether it's about calcium, which is important for heart health, muscular health. It's not just for bone health, as we often talk about osteoporosis, which is a condition that affects especially women folk because of a low amount of, so to speak, of calcium in the diet. Calcium is very important when it comes to our heart health, our muscular health, and so on and so on and so on. And there are many foods that we can use that would give us ample supply of calcium. So it's important to have that checked out in your blood works when we go to get our physicals done with our doctor. So that was point number two that came across very forcibly in the workshop. In addition to that, it was it was emphasized and we were asked as families, especially our women folk, to not let us not forget that men do get depressed as well. Men have emotional issues that affect wellness, performance, and relationships. Holding on to the taboos that men should not talk about what is affecting them, men should not cry, and all those taboos do not help. In this regard, yes, women, we are asking you on this program, Inside Health, to pay close attention to what's happening with your husband, your spouse, your brothers, and all the ones you love, those in your circle. We're encouraging that strongly. There's nothing wrong in going to a doctor or someone you trust, whether it's your pastor or someone, whoever you trust, to have a conversation. It might not necessarily be a situation that requires him, the man, to say get medication to help with some form of depression. And depression can vary in severity. It can range from a simple, what we call dysthymia or Monday morning blues, to major depression that requires treatment and other things like that, psychiatric treatment and other things like that. It might just also require just what we call didactic therapy or talk therapy, someone with whom you can speak with over what is bothering you. And God knows in today's world, with all the problems affecting us, financial and otherwise, I can only imagine what it feels like out there, not having someone in whom you trust to talk about issues. I have a sage. I have a few friends, persons with whom I speak about issues that affect me, whether it's about health or social issues, political issues, religious issues, and all. I have a, sp- I pre- I'm sharing this with you. I also have a spiritual counselor, one with whom I consult when I really need to have a conversation in that regard. And friends, I'm talking to you about, we're talking about these things. These are things that I try to practice. I'm not perfect, but I try these things myself. For example, I was not on the program last Monday, primarily because on that same day, I had a scheduled colonoscopy to do on that day. It left me feeling sedated and all of that. I shared that with Monty and all of that. But I had to do that. That is all part of my health care. I did my prostate examination a few months ago, and now I have my blood works, all my blood works to go do in a couple of days. So what I'm saying to you are things that I try to practice myself. I'm really encouraging men to really go out there to really get checked out properly. Don't be afraid to speak with someone you trust. Finally, on this piece for today's program, I want to talk a wee bit. We want to talk a wee bit about Met compliance. That came up in the discussions on the 26th on that workshop. One male participant asked about the side effects of taking meds for high blood pressure. And in asking the question, he referred to sexual impotence, basically saying that he he was concerned about taking medication or medications for high blood pressure because he was concerned that one of the side effects would be a decrease in his sexual power. He becomes sexually impotent. Well, the answer that came from the team was the same across board. The question was asked, do you prefer to suffer the complications, including, say, amputations if your diabetes is unmanaged and you end up with gangrene and you lose your toes and then you lose your foot, you use your leg, you look up right up to your knee and the entire limb? Do you prefer to use your eyesight because you have diabetes and you have glaucoma and all those things coupled with the diabetes? And you're not taking your meds, it's because your diabetes is not managed, or you prefer to die and leave your loved ones behind with somebody with grief and all of that when you could have done something about it, or you prefer not to take your meds for high blood pressure and end up with kidney problems, and then your kidneys are not functioning, then you have to end up having to go through dialysis, which requires a lot of money. What do you prefer? Or do you prefer to have a conversation with your doctor and decide with your doctor and your pharmacist which which medication or medications, which ones are best for you? And there are many good medications out there for high blood pressure. And when we present the workshop in a couple of weeks' time, you'll hear some of the examples that were referenced by one of the doctors. I think this is Dr. Fitzpatrick. Friends, what do you think? Guys, what do you think? Do you prefer to suffer and leave your family and friends in pain and grief? Or you prefer to have a conversation with a doctor, find the right medication for you, manage your blood pressure, manage your sugar level, and live a decent life, a high quality of life? You can do that with medication. But you need to have that conversation. Friends, those were some of the themes. There were other themes that came through the workshop, but I just wanted to share some of them with you this evening on Inside Health. Sincerely hope you found them useful, and hopefully they triggered some thought in you. And I sincerely hope this would sort of move you into making some decisions about your health if you were hesitant to do so before now. We'll be back shortly following our break. Thank you. On the other side, we'll talk about Easter. Easter. Stay with us, my friends. Stay with us. We'll be back with you shortly.
It's the Vin Abbott Show with news, views, and interviews. The music in the mix on Saturdays, 4 p.m. Kankadi Radio. Hi friends, what's happening in your corner? Beta group meeting, a sporting activity, a community activity, some upcoming event. Whatever happening in your corner, let us know. We'll share it on Kankadi Radio. So email us at kankadi.radio@gmail.com. That's CANCARDI.radio@gmail.com. We are in your corner.
Beauty and the Band, the official essential store for all your handbag needs. With our efficient prices, no one else can beat. Offering you a wide range of tote bags, satchels, clutch purses, and so much more. Follow us on Instagram, The Bag Connection 2023, or call us at 434-8310. Beauty and the Bag, adding the sexy to your outfit.
According to environmentalist Dr. Andrew Simmons of SVG in his book Impacts of Climate Change on Young People in Small Island Communities, climate change action must prepare young people with new skills.
Cecil Brown, Vincentian UK-based author of the book Cassiope Caribbean PI, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Mysteries, and the regional winner in the Commonwealth Short Story Prize 2022. And here is an excerpt from Cassiope. I should be at home, writing up my reports on a blessed Sunday. But where am I instead? Settling domestic disputes? Up! Let me show you what I do to those who make me miss my Sunday meal. Cassiope is available online.
The Hill News Network presents Inside Health, 30-minute program in which we explore the human body and functions. We'll share real-life stories and the latest in medical science as we look at related diseases, conditions, and determinants of health that affect quality of life. So join me, Vin Abbott, on Monday evenings from 8 for Inside Health on Bay Hill News Net, also on KincardioRadio.info.
Well, welcome back to this week's edition of Inside Health. Hope all is going well. By the way, I said a while ago to you before the break that I had my colonoscopy done last Monday. I'm happy to report that it returned which is a wonderful result. I'm clean, negative, free of colon cancer, but God is due all the praise. God is due all the praise. Thank you, the Almighty God. And I'm just wondering, Monty, by the way, there's someone who is very familiar with Kincardie Radio and Bay Hill News Network, Success Radio and Sun City Radio. You understand is somewhere on homeland, somewhere around. And I don't know if I was saying something in the background there, if our friend is somewhere in the studio of Bay Hill News Network. I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know. I have a special sense, you know. I'm just wondering. Monday, do you have a special guest in your studio? I'm wondering. Okay, it doesn't seem as though we have anyone special in this studio. Well, Monty's special. Well, I was just wondering. Okay, let's get into it. It's Easter, and we coming to the end of Lent. And for those of us who are part of the Christian community, especially in the Western world, you know that Lent is a Christian season of spiritual preparation before Easter, and especially in Western churches. And it begins on Ash Wednesday after Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago. And during Lent, that is, many Christians observe a period of fasting, repentance, moderation, self-denial, and spiritual discipline, reflections, and all. And according to Christian principles and beliefs, the purpose of the Lenten season is to set aside time for reflection on Jesus Christ, to consider his suffering and his sacrifice, his life, death, burial, and resurrection. And so many of us do that in different ways. And one of the popular ways to do that is to do some fasting, to stay away from the dance halls, to cut back on the alcohol, probably cut back on the amount of meats and things like that, reduce the sexual activities and all of that. Those are all practices that the Christian members of the Christian community tend to engage in around this time. And I think I said before in the program, around the Lenten season also, traditionally radio stations in the Caribbean tended to shy away from playing very secular kinds of music, and they tended to lean in a little bit on on calypso. Strange enough, but there are many other genres of music that are very secular, but we tend to lean in on calypso. Calypso being, you know, our thing, reggae being our thing, but calypso in the Caribbean. So here we are. We are in the Holy Week, the week of Passion. And one of the questions that is often asked is why don't Christians or Catholics eat meat on Fridays? And according to the Diocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis, Catholics abstain from flesh meat on Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, and the Fridays of Lent. Abstinence is one of our oldest Christian traditions. And from the first century, the day of the crucifixion has been traditionally observed as a day of abstaining from flesh meat to honor Christ, who sacrificed his flesh on a Friday. So that's the reason why, not only in Lent, but on Fridays, some folks who in the Christian community tend to shy away from eating meat, because meat is sort of in the view of folks synonymous with the flesh of Jesus Christ. Well, up until 1966, church law prohibited meat on all Fridays throughout the entire year. The new law was changed in 1983 in the revised Code of Canon Law, which states, pardon me, abstinence is to be observed on Ash Wednesday and on the Friday of the Passion and Death of our Lord Jesus Christ. All persons who have completed their 14th year are bound by law of abstinence, and the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops extended this law to include all Fridays in Lent. And this is what it goes on to say. This piece from the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis. Since Jesus Christ sacrificed his flesh for us on Good Friday, we refrain from eating flesh meat in his honor on Fridays. Flesh meat includes the meat of mammals and poultry, and the main foods that come under this heading are beef and pork, chicken, and turkey. While flesh is prohibited, the non-flesh products of these animals are not. Things like milk, cheese, butter, and eggs. Fish do not belong to the flesh meat category. And the Latin word for meat is caro, from which we get English words like carnivore or carnivorous, applies strictly to flesh meat and has never been understood to include fish. Now, abstinence is a form of penance. Penance expresses sorrow and contrition for our wrongdoing, indicates our intention to turn away from sin and turn back to God, and it makes reparation for our sins. It helps to cancel the debt and pay the penalties incurred by our transgressions. Finally, on this piece, why we stay away from meat, abstinence is the practice of self-denial to grow in holiness. Jesus asked his disciples to deny themselves and take up their cross, based on Matthew 16:24. Abstinence is a sober way to practice simplicity and austerity, to deny the cravings of our bodies to honor Jesus, who practiced the ultimate form of self-denial when he gave his body for us on the cross. Thus, to give up flesh meat on Fridays only to feast, well, that is, there are countless options for simple Friday meatless dinners, like pancakes, waffles, soup and rolls, chipped tuna, toast, macaroni and cheese, fried egg sandwiches, grilled cheese sandwiches, cheese pizza, and of course, fish. And we can go on, adding the Caribbean flavor to that list of things that can be used on Fridays, on Good Friday. I don't know what Monty you will be using, or listeners be using on Good Friday. I remember as a kid growing up on St. Vincent and the Grenadines on Good Friday, it was all about mackerel and things like that, and no meat, no red meat, no chicken, no pork, nothing like that. It was all about mackerel and I think smoked herring and things like that on Good Friday. Whatever you do on Good Friday or the rest of this week, my friends, whether you're practicing Christian or not, but you're part of the culture, I wish you all the very best uh, for your for your Good Friday, for this week of Passion. And it's always a good thing to do some fasting and do some reflections. You know, whoever you perceive as your supreme being, it's always a good thing to do some reflections and see where you want to go with life from here on onward. But whatever you do, we wish you a blessed Easter, blessed uh, Good Friday, whatever you eat or don't eat, and we wish you the very best. So this brings us to the final segment of today's program, the interesting story about the hot cross bun. Hot cross buns, one a penny, two a penny, hot cross buns. If you haven't got a daughter, give them to your sons. One a penny, two a penny, hot cross buns. Monty, do you remember that? Let me repeat. Hot cross buns, hot cross buns. One and a penny, two a penny, hot cross buns. If you haven't got a daughter, give them to your sons. One a penny, two a penny, hot cross buns. Oh, my friends, those were the days. We used to sing that particular song or that piece there, our childhood days on St. Vincent and the Grenadines during this time, Easter time. And also, I was reminded by Jean that hot cross buns are not only used at this time of year, they also used at wakes and all that when you have, you're paying respects to a loved one who had just passed away. So whether it's on 9th or third night or whenever, cocoa and hot cross buns were served. And also hot cross buns are not uncommon to us in the Caribbean. So for the next few minutes, I know we've gone a little bit past 9. What is the story behind the hot cross buns as coming out of the European countries? And this piece here, I'm referencing some material from Ravenhook Bakehouse. So I'll read some of the material here quickly for you. Hot cross buns have been synonymous with Easter celebrations since they appeared in the 12th century in England. Interestingly, hot cross buns predate Christianity, with their origins in paganism. Ancient Egyptians used small round breads topped with crosses to celebrate the gods. The cross divided the bread into four equal sections, representing the 4 phases of the moon and or the 4 seasons, depending on the occasion. Later, Greeks and Romans offered similar sweetened rolls in tribute to Eos, the goddess of the morning, and to Istra, goddess of light, who lent their name to Easter observances. The cross on top symbolized the horns of a sacrificial ox. The English word bun is a derivative of the Greek word for ceremonial cakes and breads, bun, spelled B-O-U-N, as against B-O-N or B-U-N. In the Middle Ages, home bakers marked their loaves with crosses before baking. They believed the cross would ensure a successful bake, warding off the evil spirits that inhibit the bread from rising. This superstition gradually faded, except for marking Good Friday loaves and hot cross buns, only to be replaced, that is, by another one. This time the loaves and buns were hung from the ceiling like sausages. It was believed that the bread would never mold and would provide protection against evil spirits and illness until the following Good Friday, when the loaves and buns would be replaced. In the event of illness, a portion of bread could be removed from its string and crushed into a powder which was incorporated into water for therapeutic effect. During the same period, Jews hung bread and a container of water from the ceiling to ward off cholera. They believed its power was so strong that one loaf in one house would protect the community. To avoid detection, early Christians celebrated the resurrection of Christ at the same time of the year as the pagan spring celebration. It was in the 12th century that an English monk decorated his freshly baked buns with a cross on Good Friday, also known as the Day of the Cross. The custom gained traction, and over the years, fruits and precious spices were included to represent health and prosperity. Spiced buns were banned when the English broke ties with the Catholic Church in the 16th century. However, by 1592, Queen Elizabeth I relented and granted permission for commercial bakers to produce buns for funerals, Christmas, and Easter. Otherwise, they could be baked in homes. The bakers argued that a cross cut into a loaf or bun induced a more pronounced rise in the oven, an axiom then, an axiom now. Farmers began to place hot cross buns in their stored grain to distract mice and other pests, much the way shuffle pie was used by American housewives. By the early 19th century, the bun house of Chelsea, famous for Chelsea buns, was the largest producer of hot cross buns. It remained so for over a century until the building was demolished. Once again, English specialty, the bun's popularity has become a seasonal staple around the world and is included in Le Coupe de Monde de la Boulangerie, breads of the world. It is now part of our culture. It's not going anywhere. There can be no Easter. There can be no Good Friday without hot cross buns, my friends, wherever you are, especially in the Western world. Remember, it's 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. If you have no daughters, give them to your sons. And if you have no kind of pretty little elves, why then, good faith, and eat them all yourselves. 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. Butter them and sugar them and put them in your muns, to mean mouths. Hot cross buns, 1 a penny poker, 2 a penny tongues, 3 a penny fire shovel. Hot cross buns, hot cross buns. Friends, whatever you do, have a reflective and wonderful Easter. Whatever you do, enjoy Good Friday. It's a blessed day, and I wish you all the very best for Good Friday and the rest of the Holy Week and the week of Passion into Easter when we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And remember, health is not just about the physical. It's physical, mental, social, and spiritual. Whoever you perceive as your supreme being, we respect that. We are into that season. It's Easter. Celebrate. And hey, enjoy your buns. Whatever you do, enjoy your buns. Megan, Monty, thank you very much for the extra time. And all the folks listening on the program this evening, thank you so much for being there. We hope to join you. I am not sure about Easter Monday. We'll get back to you on that. Easter Monday next month. I'm not sure about that. We'll be obviously informing you in that regard. Have a great one. Love you.
The Hill News Network presents Inside Health, 30-minute program in which we explore the human body and functions. We'll share real-life stories and the latest in medical science as we look at related diseases, conditions, and determinants of health that affect quality of life. So join me, Vin Abbott, on Monday evenings from 8 for Inside Health on Bay Hill News Net, also on KincardioRadio.info. The St. George's Cathedral Fundraising Committee presents an afternoon tea party of elegance with a cup of tea. Great minds share great thoughts. It's on Sunday, April 16th, 2023, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Price $25. A hat parade forms part of the entertainment package at the Cathedral Car Park, Sunday, April 16th, 2023.
Beauty and the Bag, the official store for all your handbag needs. With our efficient prices, no one else can beat. Offering you a wide range of tote bags, satchels, clutch purses, and so much more. Follow us on Instagram, The Bag Connection 2023, or